is Michaela Beckman, and I'll be presenting on animal sacrifice in Scandinavian folklore. I hope wherever you're at, you're safe and warm, and I suggest grabbing a hot beverage of your choice and curling up with a quarantine buddy. So to start, I will tell you a story from the Sami folklore. It's called How Wild Animals Became Tame Ones. So it starts out with this miller. He's very popular, very famous in his village. And finally, he finds the love of his life, and they plan out their wedding. And because the miller is so popular, he invites everyone in the area, including the wild animals. So the wild animals, seeing this as a sign of great respect, decide to send their chiefs to go to the wedding. And so, because he's punctual, the wolf goes out, and on his way there, he sees a little boy getting ready to fish. And he's like, "Hey, how you doing, little guy?" And the kid's like, "Oh, what's up, Wolf?" And the wolf is like, "Oh, nothing much, just going to, the miller's wedding." And the kid's like, "Dude, that's a bad idea. I've known the miller, and let me just say, you have really lovely fur, and that would make a great rug. And he's the kind of guy who'd do that. Just go home. It's safer there." And the wolf thinks about it, and he's like, that's some pretty sound advice. As much as I'd love to go to this party, I love my life more. So he goes home and just stays with his family. The second one to head off is the bear. And the bear, he's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to the miller's wedding." And on his way there, he encounters the boy. And he's like, "How's it hanging, my dude?" And the kid's like, "What's up? I don't see you in these parts very often." And the bear's like, "Yeah, I'm going to the miller's wedding." And the kid's like, "Hey, I hate to tell you this, but the miller, I don't know about him. He just seems very shifty. And I just want to say, you have a beautiful pelt. It makes some really great, warm clothing. Do you really want to go to the miller's wedding? He might not be the best friend you think he is. He might be trying to trick you." And the bear is like, sound advice. I always felt a bit off about this miller. So he turns around and heads home. Then the fox comes, and the fox is like, "Oh my gosh, I'm ready to party at this thing. I'm going to do some tricks. I'm going to say some things. It's going to be great. I might sing a little." And on his way there, he encounters the boy. And he's like, "Zup, boy?" And the kid's like, "Are you going to the miller's wedding too?" And the fox is like, "Heck yeah, I'm just so excited. I'm going to be number one. I'm going to be the best man. The best man is going to wish he was me, because I'm going to be so awesome at this wedding." And the kid's like, "I don't think so. I mean, you are as entertaining as all get out, but I think the way they're going to be entertained is by setting the dogs on you and ripping you to shreds, dude." And the fox is like, "You know what? That's sadly legit. Bye." And he turns around and he goes home. And so it's later in the day, and the kid's finally found his fishing spot, and he's sitting there, and who does he see but a cow? And she's wearing a lovely flower wreath. And the kid's like, "Hey, how you doing, Miss Cow?" And she's like, "Doing well. I'm heading to the wedding. I'm just so excited. You don't even know. I'm late because I spent all this time making such a pretty flower crown." And the kid's like, "Oh no." And she's like, "Girl, listen, let me tell you. You make some pretty fine products. That crown, your milk. Once they see you, they're going to grab you by the horns, and they're never going to let you go, because they're going to ask for some milk. They're going to get that milk because you're so generous. And then they're going to be like, we can't ever let this go. It's too delicious. And you'll be enslaved." And she's like, "Psh, I didn't make this milk for nothing. I didn't make this crown for nothing. I'm heading on over there. See ya." And off she goes. And when she gets to the wedding, everything happens the way the kid says. Next up, he sees the goat and the sheep, and they're heading off together. And again, he warns them away from the wedding. And they're like, you don't know anything. We know the miller. He would never do that. They go there, and they get captured. Next off is the horse. And the horse is like, how's it hanging, little man? And the kid's like, are you off to the miller's wedding too? Because let me tell you, it's not safe. I don't trust this miller. If he sees you, you're one of the stronger and more handsome members of the forest. If you go there, they're going to want that strength for themselves. Stay here. Go back home with your family. If they capture you, they'll capture yourself and your children and keep you for generations. And the horse is like, yeah, I am the strongest being in this forest. Do you see these legs, these hind legs? I can kick a man. And he doesn't listen to the kid, and he heads on to the wedding, and of course, he's roped and trapped and enslaved, just as the kid said. Finally, the reindeer comes up, and the reindeer's like, hey, I can't stay and chit-chat, but because I'm late to a wedding. And the kid's like, dude, just don't go. Just don't. It's not safe. Listen, he'll see you. You are the strongest thing in the forest. You're beautiful. You have your antlers. You have your coat. Dude, just don't go. And the antlered reindeer is like, kid, I'll be fine. I'm the swiftest thing in the forest. Nothing can catch me. I'm the strongest thing in the forest. I'd like to see them try. So he heads over there, and of course, he's also captured. Because this is a Sami folktale. And Sami are one of the few cultures that have domesticated reindeer. And honestly, this is a very, very cool story on many levels, especially when it comes to animal sacrifice. We can always talk about how animals, especially in our culture, sacrifice, though maybe not willingly, their lives for food, for products that we need, comfort, etc. But what's really cool about this tale in particular is it's not just about domestication. It's also about the history of the Sami. Because originally, the Sami, well, actually, traditionally, and it's still practiced to this day, the Sami beliefs are that every being on Earth, including the Earth, has a consciousness. And many Sami believed, I'm not sure how many still believe, that to communicate with nature, with animals, they would have to sacrifice something, especially animals. And archaeologists who researched this discovered that when Sami originally came to the Nordic countries, they were sacrificing like wild animals, bears, swans, things like that. And as time progressed, they started a trade route with Russia. And Sami are really well known for both their reindeer and their furs. And reindeer have always been a crucial part of their culture, because even in their oldest sacrifices, they saw evidence of reindeer bones. But as time progressed, more reindeer bones appeared and more domesticated animals appeared, like sheep and goats. And it turns out, because of their trading with Russia, they started to hunt less and less wild animals and more domesticated animals to produce the furs. And that shifted the way that they sacrificed their animals and what animals they sacrificed, which, is really cool. And what's also really cool is even during the times when they were most persecuted, especially around Martin Luther's time, a very select few never gave up practicing this ritual. Sorry, words are hard for me today. But now going into a different type of folklore is Sweden and Denmark and their kyrkogram and church lambs. The Christian tradition has had a very interesting view on animal sacrifice over the years. In most places, it's considered beyond taboo. It's a tie to paganism, it's a tie to black magic. It's just not seen as a good thing. Except potentially for a while in Sweden and Denmark. Because while I could not find any physical proof for this, I couldn't find any archaeological digs. There are a lot of stories of the original, the earliest members of the church in Sweden and Denmark burying an animal underneath the altar of a church for its spirit to protect the church. This is a very, I don't think I have to say how interesting and weird this story is, because it is. But the stories that are connected to it are very interesting, and I'm not even sure whether or not they're true, but the folklore behind it is fascinating. So, in Sweden, church lambs were basically killed to represent Christ. And it was thought, weirdly enough, that if somebody saw a church lamb dancing at night, that place where they danced would soon be filled with the grave of a child, which, pleasant imagery. But it didn't have to be just lambs. There was also stories of dogs, there were stories of pigs. In Denmark, there was this very interesting story about a young woman who, there's no nice way to say this, robbed a corpse from the sea, and the corpse, even though technically it didn't need money, the spirit of the corpse came back and just haunted her, just climbed on her and wouldn't let her go. So eventually, as it kept getting heavier and heavier, she dragged it and herself to the church at night, hoping to pray for a miracle. And a miracle kind of happened, because when she got there, the church scrim sensed evil and jumped at her. She barely escaped with her life, but it tore that spirit to shreds, and a part of her dress. But because of that, she escaped. Yay, church scrim! Another story. This one is more about a church spirit. Was one day a church in Denmark was being renovated, and this dude heard about it, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, there's a spirit there. We have to get that spirit out, or it will fall with the church. This isn't good." So he went to the church, and in the middle of the night, he was like, "Hey, I have a dog cart here. Hey, spirit, the church is getting renovated. Why don't you, hop in this dog cart and I'll take you to another church a little ways away, and, you can live there until the renovation's done." And as he's waiting, suddenly his dog cart just sinks, like someone just got on. He's like, "Okay, off we go." So he takes the spirit to the church. He's like, "Okay, dude, this is the church I was talking about. Have a relaxing stay. See you later." And he goes off and lives his merry life. And dies. And the church, it takes a while to be built, And as the time progresses, nobody remembers. Everyone forgets about the spirits. So finally the church is built, and it's a little bit before the spirit hears. And he's like, "Did everyone seriously forget about me? Why has no one brought me back home? I can't walk there. I'm a ghost. I have no legs." So, around that time, the church is struck by a bolt of lightning and burns to the ground. And to this day, everyone was like, "It was that church spirit. We should have brought him back home." Because, don't forget the church spirits. So that's the very complicated view that the church and animal sacrifice in Scandinavian folklore had. On to necromancy. Necromancy's gross, especially in Iceland. I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty, just know it's really, really gross. And definitely, it's just gross. So I will tell you the story of Thorgir's bull, which also involved necromancy. So there is this really powerful and totally just insane wizard named Thorgir. And he was like, one day, he was like, I'm going to get myself a wife. I'm lonely. I just need a wife in my life. So he goes out, he sees this young girl in the village, and he's like, she'll be my wife. So she goes up to this young lady, and he's like, do you want to marry me? And she's like, dude, no. Stranger danger. Creeping me out. He's like, but... And she's like, no. So he, in his infinite wisdom, goes home, slaughters a calf, skins the calf alive. Not alive, it was still dead. Forgive me. Skins the calf, and then with his brother, somehow inserts the essences of other animals, most likely through their body parts, into this thing, and then creates a bull from it, a spiritual bull, a ghost bull, that is still flayed, but is dragging its skin behind it by its ankles. Because, this guy is just so nice. And so, this guy sees this abomination he made and is like, okay, this girl turned me down, this woman, she turned me down, and nobody says no to Thorgir, and sends this bull to kill her. And it does. Quite honestly, brutally. Basically, it haunts her nightmares, gives her bruises until, she just collapses from pure exhaustion. She can't go anywhere. She's just, everything is the bull. Everywhere is the bull, and everywhere it's hurting her. And it's messed up. And so, once it's done, you'd think it's done, right? It'll just disappear into the mist. But no. It finds one of her cousins, who's also a woman, and it starts doing the same thing to her. So this woman, she's like, I don't want to die like my cousin did. So she calls a magician, and she's like, dude, Thorgir set this on my cousin, can you save me from it? And he's like, I will chant my chance, I'll see what I can do. So he starts trying to summon the spirit away, and then he finds out that he can't. That Thorgir managed to somehow block any protection, any spells to dissipate the bull. And he's like, yeah, you're screwed, bye. So this woman also dies. And then Thorgir's bull goes on a rampage. Straight up. And he's especially out to get Thorgir because that's kind of a terrible unlife? Not life? It's a terrible thing. And Thorgir knows this, and because Thorgir is such a lovely person, when he sees this bull coming for him, he runs into his house and screams at the wife he somehow managed to get during this period. And he's like, give me my child. And she's like, why? And he's like, because I'm going to feed her to my ghost bull. And his wife's like, why? And he's like, not understanding. Oh, you see, it's out to kill me, so I'm going to let it kill the kid. It's great. And his wife is like, why don't you just go out back and release the heifer we have? Let the bull kill her. So he releases the heifer, and the heifer is torn to shreds because, enraged bull, ghost thing, abomination. And that somewhat sated its anger. It only, after that, tried to murder Thorgir's daughters a couple times, but Thorgir gave his children a couple runes to protect themselves, and then, because it couldn't get to Thorgir, it started driving all the livestock around insane. It said, in that part of Scandinavia, if you see a mist in the middle of the day, it's most likely Thorgir's bull, because he's still there. And in fact, It's said that when Thorgir was dying, the bull shapeshifted either into a small cat or a small dog and lay on his chest to suck out his dying breath. Because, sometimes you just have to get revenge from the person that murdered you and then brought you back to life in a really just messed up way. Now, this all might seem like fun and really weird stuff, which, it is. But it does have some relevance in modern culture today. You see, as people really just want to get back to the old ways of doing it, to paganism even. Animal sacrifice is being brought back into our society. There's this one pagan religion who is doing their best to replicate Scandinavian rituals and practices using the texts they have, and are currently trying to recreate the blot, which is an ancient Scandinavian ritual of sacrificing animals. And because I am not the most elegant of speakers, I'll just read you from my notes how they kill their animals. Boop, boop, boop. Going down my notes. 1 second. Boop, boop, boop. Future. There we go. Doop, doop. Conclusion. Obviously, I was not prepared for this. Here we go. The methods they used to sacrifice the animals were clearly laid out. They started by selecting the animal, treating it gently by providing it with the best food and care. Then, in a small building they built, it was cleansed and warded off so that the ritual would be considered holy. Guests would gather in the buildings to sing and recite ancient prayers before the animal was let in. To invoke the god of thunder, Thor, a hammer was held over the animal before the guests laid their hands on it to thank it for the sacrifice and ask it to be a messenger for them. Then the animal could be killed in a plethora of ways, ranging from a clean cut to the neck, to strangulation, to cutting off their heads with an axe. This man, Brenga, who leads this certain ceremony, preferred to shoot the animal in the head before bleeding it, as they wished to be as humane as possible. However, that was looked down on by their elders, who thought shooting would be unholy. So, yeah, there's a lot to think about on this, because as we saw in the stories from How the Wild Animals Became Tame Ones and the Kierkegaard, our culture takes practices like that and they try to understand them in different ways. The culture that normally practices it's seen as normal. It's seen as part of the daily ritual, like with the Sami. So it's just part of their life, and it's not seen as either good or evil. It just is seen as is, or a necessary evil, if anything. With societies that are majority against such practices, it's seen as frankly just straight up evil. However, sometimes it's more of a shade of gray, because we can't police every station, we can't police every gathering, but animal welfare must come into play. I'm not saying even stop all of the killings, because in that case we should stop eating meat, we should stop, and no, that wouldn't be a solution. However, by managing the cruelty, like strangulation or chopping their head off with an axe, we can lessen the pain that an animal will experience. We don't need to be cruel in our practices and our rituals. So yeah, I hope this gave people some food for thought, and I hope it entertained some. And I hope everyone stays safe and warm, and have an excellent rest of your day, everyone. Hope to hear from you soon. Bye!